Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. Today's Tuesday, March 24th. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. Welcome in. We have a busy show. Recruiting is red hot. So before we get going, guys, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We are going to get into it. All right, let's bring in the best recruiting insider in the biz, Steve Wiltfong. And we're going to start with number one overall, Jackson Cantwell. He's on his spring tour. He hit Miami. He's been to Michigan, Ohio State on the schedule. Steve, what's the latest with number one overall Jackson Cantwell?
The Knicks a high five-star finished his spring swing on Sunday, wrapping up at Michigan. That came after trips to Miami first, then Ohio State. I still believe, Josh, that Georgia is the program setting the pace in this recruitment, but they have a lot of competition, as you can see. Michigan's a front runner. That still remains true. Oregon is a program that he did not visit this spring because he knew he was for sure taking that official visit to Oregon. Dan Lanning and the Ducks recruiting him as aggressively as anybody, and so is Miami. They're the program that stock is rising in this recruitment after taking this spring visit. He took a trip to Coral Gables in the fall to see Miami play, but this was a more in-depth look at the Hurricanes program where he got a chance to spend time with Mario Cristobal, offensive line coach, Coach Maribel, and the staff, and see why they've had so much success getting true freshman offensive linemen on the field and ready to play. Guys like Panay Sewell and most recently Francis Mauigoa. He loves the way that they install the offensive line play, the way they coach him on the field, the way Cristobal takes them one day, the way Mirabal takes the others another day, and just the importance of the offensive line position within the Miami program. NIL is not the major factor in Jackson Cantwell's decision, but when you're the number one player in the country, it's certainly relevant. And when it comes to the Hurricanes and Jackson Cantwell, that is not an area where they're going to lose. Again, I think Georgia's setting the pace for Cantwell. But you got Oregon and Michigan still right there, Miami trending up, Missouri still in the mix, Ohio State trying to get an official visit still. That's not set. He had a good visit to the Buckeyes campus this week. Ryan Day and company trying to get an official to stay alive in the recruitment for the number one player in the country.
How can you read this recruitment where everywhere Jackson Cantwell goes, we see the pictures. He's having a phenomenal time. We see the quotes. He loves every program he visits. So how do you get a read on this recruitment?
Well, I think Jackson Cantwell took these visits to try and eliminate programs, but he goes on these trips and sees more about why they're great programs and why he could really be successful. So these official visits are going to be crucial. If it was up to him and his family, I think he'd be committed right now if there was a big enough separation. Again, I like where Georgia stands, but he's seeing promising things at Oregon and Michigan and Miami now. And then you still have Missouri, Legacy School, still in the mix there. So as he continues to work through it, they have those NIL discussions. This is how it sets up going into the summer. I do not expect him to take another spring visit as he chases another national championship in shot put and discus this spring.
All right, so we're probably 3-4 months away from a Jackson Cantwell decision, but one top recruit, we are not that far away, is quarterback Jared Curtis, the number one quarterback in America, announced his decision date. It's going to be May 5th. Cinco de Mayo is when Jared Curtis is going to pick between Oregon and Georgia. Steve, what is the latest now that we have an announcement date set?
Well, Georgia and Oregon have been in a slobber knocker on the trail. Obviously, a one-time Georgia commit when he decommitted from the Bulldogs in the fall. We saw the Oregon Ducks surge. Oregon had a lot of momentum over the last month. Looked like they could have even been closing in on a commitment from Curtis, but Curtis takes visits to Oregon and Georgia one more time earlier this month. I think it's the Bulldogs that may have the inch right now, but he's continuing to work through his process. Dan Lanning, Will Stein and company, still a very attractive option to him. Out west in Eugene, the way they've been prolific on offense with guys like Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel lighting it up Saturday in, Saturday out, the success Bo Nix had in year one with the Denver Broncos. And then Georgia just getting back around the Bulldogs program, the proximity to home, seeing the caliber of players that they've recruited on the offensive line, brought into that wide receiver room, getting back around Kirby Smart, that coaching staff. I think that was a huge visit for Georgia. And he's expected back for G-Day, for Georgia's spring game later in the spring. Nothing on the calendar yet for Oregon. It wouldn't surprise me in what's fluid in recruiting these days. If he made it back out to Eugene for what I think will be a fourth time, he saw them beat Maryland during the season, then returned earlier this month, and then went out one time before that. But Georgia, they got to get these recruitments to the finish line. Cantwell, Curtis, they're not going to be easy, but I like where the Bulldogs stand for both right now. There was a time where we liked where the Bulldogs stood for Justice Terry. He went to Texas at the last minute. We'll see what happens with Cantwell. We'll see if Oregon can get it done with Jared Curtis.
A monster recruitment going to come to an end very soon. We need you recruiting experts in the comments section below to tell us, where do you think Jared Curtis is going to end up? Will it be Eugene? Will it be Athens? Let us know. Comment section below.
Josh, you were just out with one of the top players in the country at Santa Ana Mater Dei, 5-star receiver, Ohio State commit, Chris Henry Jr. What's your pulse on that recruitment right now as Oregon, Miami, and USC continue to try and chip away at a Buckeyes verbal that goes back to 2023?
Yeah, it was great to be able to sit down and talk with Chris Henry Jr. just one-on-one. I learned a lot. I learned that his relationship with Ohio State is rock solid. I think that his relationship with Brian Hartline is the one that matters. That's kind of the pulse of this relationship, or of this recruitment. He knew Brian Hartline wasn't going anywhere. He told me, as a matter of fact. But I'll say this: Miami is way more of a player in this recruitment than I thought heading in. I mean, I thought Miami was a name that some people threw around, but Chris Henry Jr. has a really close relationship with that staff. He likes the weather. I mean, they got a lot of things going for them. I would maybe, obviously Oregon is probably the team. If Chris Henry were to flip today, that's where it would be too. But I think it's probably Ohio State in the 1 spot right now. I'd put I'd put Oregon in the 2 spot, Miami in the 3, USC in the 4. He's going to take official visits to all of them. And he pretty much told me, without saying he's going to make a final decision, he's going to make a final decision here at the end of the summer. He said he's going to take those officials, talk it over with the people that matter, his family, his friends, and then make sure that he's locked in to the right school. Now, will that be Ohio State? Will it be somebody else? I mean, I think these visits are really important coming up, Steve.
We've seen Ohio State hang on and win a battle like this with Jeremiah Smith. Can they do it again? He was just at Oregon, and he has those official visits in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if he popped back up on the Ducks campus unofficially more times. On his last visit, he got a chance to meet new wide receivers coach Ross Douglas. Again, he's always been high on Oregon, but Ohio State, not only their track record of receivers being drafted in the first round, winning Biletnikoff awards, playing in a prolific offense in college, but the way that Brian Hartline has them ready to step into NFL franchises and be among the best receivers in the NFL. That's what you're recruiting against right now if you're the other 3. But Oregon, there seems to be growing confidence around Eugene with their position with Chris Henry Jr., Miami, Kevin Beard, Cristobal, that staff, they're going to be relentless with anybody that they covet. And USC, they got the number 2 recruiting class in the country right now. They're picking up steam with guys like Talanoa Illy, Mark Bowman, Deshaun Rideau. It just seems like they can get hot at any point, and they'll look to get hot with Chris Henry Jr. down the road.
Yeah, and, walking around modern-day high school, I'll say this. I saw a lot of USC jerseys, a lot of USC sweatshirts. I mean, also saw quite a bit of Oregon gear. I was surprised. We're right there in the backyard of the USC Trojans, but there's quite a bit of students and some football players walking around. I know Green is committed to Oregon, but there was some Duck gear walking around modern-day high school. I was a little surprised by that. But right now, Chris Henry Jr. saying all the right things, locked into that Ohio State. I'll say this, talking with you guys, you and Chad, talking with Hayes Fawcett after the Jeremiah Smith recruitment. I mean, there was a lot going on in the background of that Jeremiah Smith recruitment all the way up until signing day. And I think this Chris Henry one is going to be exactly like that. All right, let's head down to Athens. We got to talk a little Georgia recruiting. Another huge weekend at Georgia. Steve, recap us on this one.
Well, we kind of talked about Georgia at the top of the show. Hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel so you're up to date on when these programs start. But Jackson Cantwell, Jared Curtis, the number one offensive tackle in the country, number one player overall, and then On3's number one ranked quarterback are guys that I think Georgia is in the best position for right now at this point in the process, but major competition for both. Oregon's involved with both of them. And then with Cantwell, you also have Miami, Michigan, Missouri, Ohio State in play. Jerry Curtis's decision date is May 5th. We had that news today at On3, and it's coming down to Georgia and Oregon. And again, I think Georgia is in a great spot for both, but not at the finish line for either. So they'll have to keep working it. They'll also keep working on a lot of the top talent that was in Athens this weekend, Josh. That starts with the number one cornerback in the On3 industry rankings, Brandon Arrington. He has Georgia in his top 6 right now with Oregon, Texas A&M, USC, Alabama, and Penn State. Dante Williams has been leading the charge in this recruitment. He said the environment at Georgia was great. He is excited by the coaching staff led by Coach Smart. Talks about how they continue to win, how Coach Smart's a defensive-minded coach, and he talks about the potential legacy of playing at Georgia and what that would mean. That's something that he could see himself being part of. So Georgia battling for Brandon Arrington. I would not have put them in the lead coming into the visit, but they're still in that battle and will continue to push. Number 2 running back in the country is Xavier Crowell out of the state of Alabama. Alabama considered the leader for Crowell, but Georgia's a program he's always had a keen eye on. He said it was a great environment. He loves how the practices are different at Georgia. And if you tune into the Wiltfong Whiparound, if you tune into the Inside Scoop, and recruits talk about attending a Georgia practice, they are the most physical in the country. Competition for spots is high. They get after each other. And these recruits that are on campus, if they are those alpha personalities, they love it. They thrive in it. And Xavier Crowell could see himself running between the tackles behind that massive offensive line at Georgia. It was a good visit for him. Some other guys that had fantastic visits include 4-star linebacker Kenneth Goodwin from the Golden State. Coco safety CJ Hester out of Sunshine State had a really good visit. And Davian Brown, a 4-star receiver from Richmond, Virginia, he says that Georgia is his top school right now coming out of the visit.
Steve, let's head to Tuscaloosa. We're going to talk Alabama recruiting after there was a big weekend with Kalen DeBoer and his staff, including a new 5-star prediction for the Tide.
Yeah, I like where Alabama stands with the On3 Industries number 2 cornerback, 5-star Jordan Edmonds out of Sprayberry, Georgia. My prediction joins the guys at Bama Online, Tim Watson, Andrew Bone, along with colleague Chad Simmons. Edmonds was trending Alabama pretty hard a month ago. Looked like he was close to committing. Places like Georgia and Tennessee really turned it up, but Alabama able to get him back on campus this weekend. Coach Mo Linguist leading the charge. I think that Alabama continues to sit in pole position. He has some official visits set up for the summer, but I think right now Alabama is the program that's trending heavy for Jordan Edmonds.
Yeah, and there was some talk that he could potentially make that decision maybe a month ago. He delayed that. Do you think that he wants to take these officials, or do you think we could still see something before then?
Well, I think there's a chance he could hop in the boat for Alabama before those official visits, but those other schools aren't going to turn it off. You know, Jordan Edmonds is a stock-up guy that tested very well at the Under Armour camp this offseason. He's got fantastic film. He's a tenacious player out there in the secondary. He's physical. He's got that makeup speed that you covet at the position, just a highly instinctual player and a guy that's been around this Alabama coaching staff a couple times now, and they love his makeup. I think it's the stars are aligning for him to end up in Alabama's class. Will a meteor come through and shake things up from one of these other SEC programs? Time will tell.
Yeah, who are you tracking when it comes to Edmonds? I know I've talked with Chad Simmons too, and he feels like Alabama's out front here. But if there is another program that could come in and kind of disrupt this recruitment, because until he comes off the board, if he keeps delaying this thing out, you and I both know that's what can happen.
Well, even in today's era, even if you do commit, it's not, nothing is signed yet. But I mean, I think Georgia's obviously an obvious one. Tennessee has had some success in the Peach State. So those are the first two that come to mind. He took a visit out to Oklahoma, visited with
Mm-hmm.
Brent Venables and company. But right now, it's Alabama's to lose for Jordan Edmonds, and Alabama's in great shape for quite a few of these visitors this weekend, Josh. The number 3 defensive lineman in the country, Nolan Wilson, out of Mississippi. Alabama was first to offer him this fall during a visit to campus. He didn't have a profile on On3 or any of the other major recruiting networks that cover high school football recruiting when Alabama offered him. They've been tracking the Picayune Memorial standout for quite some time, got him to campus and offered him a scholarship. They are the one to beat right now, but he is considering several other options right now: LSU, Florida State, Auburn, USC, to name a few. But he had an amazing visit. The way they recruited his mom this weekend he called her a guest of honor. She was extremely happy, which made him happy. But he likes the system. Got a chance to talk with Alabama staff about how he would flourish in Alabama's defense. So the Crimson Tide doing a great job with Nolan Wilson. They continue to do a fantastic job with Duncanville High 4-star defensive lineman Kevin Ford. He visited for the second time this calendar year, and Alabama is one of his favorites. Alabama is emerging as one to beat for Elijah Golden, 4-star defensive lineman out of Virginia. He had a great visit. He talked about how they practice and the level of intensity at all times within the program as they battle Notre Dame, Michigan, and others. Dre Quinn's a 4-star edge rusher from Greater Atlanta Christian that's called everything top notch. He's looking to set up an OV with Alabama. And then Anthony Davis is a 4-star linebacker from Loganville Grayson that had a good visit. There's been Auburn and Texas smoke around him, but this visit to Alabama was huge for the Crimson Tide.
All right, some great intel there from Steve on Alabama. Bama fans, talk to us. How you guys feeling about some of these top prospects? Let us know. Steve, we got to talk Notre Dame recruiting because you put in a big prediction for the Irish to land a 5-star defender. Tell us about it.
Yeah, the number 1 player, North Carolina, number 3 edge rusher per On3, number 7 player overall, Rodney Dunham Jr. out of Charlotte Myers Park, visited Notre Dame this past weekend, said it was amazing, highlighted the place and people. Al Washington, defensive line coach, lead recruiter, Marcus Freeman, heavily involved. Great school with great people. It doesn't get better than Notre Dame. And he said if you're smart enough about it, it sets you up for life. He said there's no school that compares with Notre Dame. His top 5 is Duke, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Notre Dame. Intel says it's the Irish and Bulldogs at the top. With Notre Dame, he said the level of football you get to play, plus the degree you earn, the connections you get, the type of people you're around. Again, there's nobody else in the country that has that. I think Notre Dame is pulling away in this recruitment right now. Again, Al Washington, Marcus Freeman and company pushing all the right buttons with Rodney Dunham Jr. I wouldn't be surprised if he's done with this process this spring after getting a chance to visit South Carolina and Tennessee a few times. He was at Georgia before visiting Notre Dame. He's been over to Duke. It's a great visit to Notre Dame. Even before this visit, after Notre Dame beat Penn State and moved to the national title game, he said, Notre Dame was always in my top, but now maybe they are the top. This visit, I think, has solidified the Irish in pole position for Rodney Dunham Jr. as they push for a top 10 class.
Very nice, Steve. Rodney Dunham, though, wasn't the only big-time target on campus this past week. It's been busy. What's the latest on Notre Dame recruiting?
Well, the Irish are trying to make a move with On3's number 3 tight end, Ian Premer. He's the number 25 player overall. Mike Denbrock, that Notre Dame offense, the tight end tradition that they've had in South Bend, all appealing things, plus what Notre Dame offers off the field. The Irish are trying to become one of the front runners for Ian Premer, who also visited Miami and Michigan over spring break. He's high on some local schools like Kansas, Kansas State, Missouri, Oklahoma, to name a few of those, but Notre Dame right there pushing for Ian Premer. Jordan Thomas is a 4-star cornerback from Bergen Catholic in New Jersey that got a chance to visit Notre Dame over the weekend, said it was amazing. Him and his family enjoyed their time. getting to meet the coaches in person, guys like Mike Mickens, getting to speak to current and former players, learning about Notre Dame's great culture and tradition were some of the big highlights for him. Auburn, Michigan, Ohio State, Texas A&M, some of the others that he's high on. But Notre Dame boasted one of the best secondaries in college football this year. It was the backbone of their national championship appearance this past season. And guys like Jordan Thomas and another DB saw that this weekend in Aiden Pouncey. Aiden Pouncey's a four-star safety from the Sunshine State that some schools covet at cornerback. He had great visits to LSU and Georgia this week as well. But he just said Notre Dame's a special place and he loves all the tradition there. He talked about Coach Freeman being a former player at Ohio State in the big games he played in. Said he was one of his favorite head coaches. So Notre Dame, as they battle Miami, Florida State, some of those other schools, Syracuse is in there, Clemson, North Carolina, Notre Dame emerging for Aiden Pouncey as well. Notre Dame had the number one linebacker in 2027 on campus too, Josh Cooper Witten. That's a guy they want to build that class around. He is as high on Notre Dame's board, regardless of position, in that junior class. And they were excited to get the NFL legacy recruit in South Bend this weekend and get him around that program and visualizing himself playing under the Golden Dome. That's a guy Notre Dame really wants to have. And I think that they are emerging as one of the front runners for Witten as well.
Steve, we got to talk some Michigan Wolverines recruiting because the number one overall prospect, Jackson Cantwell, just wrapped up his spring tour, and the last visit on that tour was to Ann Arbor. But he wasn't the only five-star on campus this weekend. Steve, break it down for us.
No, Michigan had some of their top targets in Ann Arbor all week as they push for a second straight top 10 recruiting class. And Jackson Cantwell feels like he fits in well in Ann Arbor. The style of play, the smash mouth football, offensive line being the focal point of the program. Sharon Moore helping coach that position. The Joe Moore Awards, just the culture at Michigan suits him well, that conference. He loves it. He got to get around Andrew Sprague, a fellow Missouri native, a big recruiting win for Notre Dame a couple cycles ago. He spent time with five-star early enrollee Andrew Babalola. He got to hang out with the number one recruit in the 2025 class, five-star quarterback Bryce Underwood. Got around Grant Newsom, the O-line coach, and his assistant Juan Castillo. Enjoyed talking ball with them. He talked about Castillo and the good pass pro stuff that he had, the institutional knowledge that Coach Castillo brings with him. He thinks Michigan's a place that can bring the best out of them. We know that when it comes to NIL, for a player like Jackson Cantwell, the way the Wolverines close that 2025 cycle, they're armed and ready to go for their elite targets in this 2026 class. Jackson Cantwell is one of them. I think when you look at the top six for Jackson Cantwell, Michigan is more than a dark horse. I would give the edge to Georgia, but he's still got visits to come. Miami's moving up the list. Oregon's always been a front runner. He's now taken two visits to Michigan, one in December and one this past weekend. He's got his official visit coming up. The Maize and Blue are in it for Jackson Cantwell moving forward.
Well, he wasn't the only big-time prospect on campus, Steve. What else is happening in the world of Michigan recruiting?
Well, on three's number 6 overall recruit, another five-star, Carter Meadows out of Washington, D.C., Gonzaga. He's someone that I think Michigan is an excellent position for. He enjoyed watching practice, loves the super competitive atmosphere that they have at Michigan, the supportive coaching style, and just, again, the foundation. They know who they are as a program. We are going to be dominant up front on both sides of the ball. Michigan has produced some of the top defensive ends in college football over the last couple of years. Yeah. Carter Meadows feels like he can keep that pipeline going. He also has a 3.9 GPA, Josh. The pedigree that Michigan has on and off the field, the development of their student athletes is something that he says sets Michigan apart from the others. Jake Krull and Titan Davis were two more elite, blue chip, highly recruited defensive ends. I think Michigan is near the top of the list for Davis. And then Jake Krull had a great visit as well. If you go to his Twitter profile, you'll see that he recently posted a picture of himself and Aiden Hutchinson. But he just enjoyed talking ball with the coaches, talked about the energy in practice. It was the first day of pads, so them boys were getting after it up there outside the big house at Michigan. and said that they were getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback during practice. Michigan stock up with Jacksonville Mandarin, 4-star defensive lineman Brian Harris. DQ Forkpa is a linebacker from IMG Academy. He said that Michigan leads in his recruitment now. Hudson Dunn is a linebacker from the state of Arizona that also had a great visit, talked about the culture, the facilities, and the history of the program, and Michigan being a high academic university. That has the Wolverines in a really good position for him. Chase Calicut, 4-star safety out of the Lone Star State. Longhorns have been trending there. But he loved his visit to Michigan. He likes the mindset around the program, highlighted his time spent with Coach Lamar Morgan, called him a true coach and a developer. And that's why Michigan's a good fit for him. He can't wait to get back. Michigan trying to make a move with the number 3 tight end in the country, Ian Premer out of Kansas. He had a really good visit on the heels of going to Notre Dame in Miami. And one big offer did happen this weekend, Josh. Devin Fitzgerald, the son of Larry Fitzgerald, NFL All-Pro, offered by Michigan. The Wolverines are moving into the list of contenders alongside Clemson, North Carolina. And one more name to highlight from the weekend up at Michigan is Matt Ludwig. He's the number 5 tight end in the country per On3. He's out of Billings, Montana. He's been to Michigan a few times now. I have an On3 RPM on the maize and blue for Ludwig. I'm keeping it there. A&M, Notre Dame, some programs he's going to go see in the future, but the family environment, getting around Coach Kasula, the blue-collar culture and family feel environment have Michigan standing out to Matt Ludwig.
Michigan fans, you guys got to be loving this. In the conversation yet again for the number 1 overall prospect, 5 stars flocking to Ann Arbor. How are you guys feeling? Talk to Steve and I. Let us know. All right, Steve, let's talk a little Ole Miss recruiting, because this weekend, right after Tristan Keys announced his commitment to LSU, he showed up in Oxford. What does it mean?
Well, that was a previously planned trip to Ole Miss, and he just stuck with the itinerary. I think people around Oxford view that recruitment far from over. Tristan Keys got to campus early on Saturday, got to spend some one-on-one time with Coach Kiffin and the staff, watched practice, got around the guys on the team. Ole Miss is going to be on the gas for Tristan Keys, just like we know Tennessee is not going to relent. Miami's going to keep pushing. Texas A&M. LSU's the obvious leader. He is committed to the Tigers, committed during his visit, but other conference programs are going to continue trying to push for Tristan Keys. Before we get into more of that visit weekend, Josh, how about the update from colleague Chad Simmons? Over the weekend was at the Overtime OT7 Spring Football Week 2 showcase in Dallas, and Landon Duckworth, 4-star quarterback, was out there competing. He tells Chad Simmons that Ole Miss is in pole position. Now, they got some major competition. Programs like Florida State, South Carolina, and Georgia are also in the mix for Landon Duckworth. But Ole Miss is setting the tone in that recruitment, and he is he's certainly in the discussion as the best dual-threat quarterback in the country. Threw for over 3,000 yards and 34 touchdowns, ran for over 600 yards and 12 more scores. He's a state champion in basketball, having a fantastic junior year in both sports, and Ole Miss is setting the tone in that recruitment for Landon Duckworth. A few others that they are trying to make a move with. Tylen Wilson, on 300 safety from in-state. He visited this weekend. He said everything was great. The system they run, he believes he would be a good fit in that Rebels secondary. Carson Sneed is a 4-star tight end. He is committed to Tennessee, but Ole Miss is on his short list. So is North Carolina and Colorado. He said he could see himself at Ole Miss, that they're very, very high up for him. He talked about how the offense is multiple and it sets everybody up for big plays. He said the place is filled with great people. He can't wait to get back for an official visit. Landon Barnes out of Duncanville, Texas. He is one of the top edge rushers in the country. He's On3's number 109 prospect overall. He liked the team's energy. He said everything was intense. He loved the environment, the way they develop defensive players. Ole Miss is a program that is on the short list for him. So Rodney Colton Jr. is a 4-star linebacker from Georgia that spoke highly of Ole Miss. Gavin Mueller's a tight end from the Midwest that enjoyed hanging out with Hayden Bradley while he was on campus. The Rebels are on his short list. So it was a big weekend for Ole Miss. Tristan Keys was obviously the headliner on campus. They're trending for quarterback Landon Duckworth, but Ole Miss coming off another terrific season. I think each year is the best season in Lane Kiffin in Ole Miss history under Lane Kiffin. They're aiming to keep it going, moving forward with some of the guys that they had on campus this weekend. And that will do it for today's episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound. Thanks for tuning in. I will be on spring break coming up, so we will not have a Wiltfong Whiparound episode for a little bit, but hit like and subscribe, tune in to the Inside Scoop and all the other hard-hitting, breaking recruiting news on the On3 Recruits channel. Take care and enjoy the rest of March Madness.